This is my third video to document my project to try and find out just how fast a flipper flips. And this is the first week I actually have numbers still that have questionable aspects to them, but numbers nonetheless. And you see now I have, if you've been following me, a new switch here, which is going to measure when that flipper actually hits the end of its stroke. And then a button here which makes that flipper go. That is a lot of fun to do. I hope it's fun to watch. Now let's watch what happens. Let's see if we can watch this really up close. The first time I did this, I thought, wait a minute. I thought that button was far enough towards the flipper to register a click, but how come it looks like it's not touching? And yet, spoilers, I get a reading every time when I push the button. So I know that I am touching. Well, the deal is that the flipper stroke takes it all the way up this far, but then the hold voltage is only this far. And it bounces off and holds. The other thing that kind of occurs to me is when we talk about how fast this flipper moves, there's a big difference between how fast it goes up and back down. I don't have a way to measure going back down, but I can, and you can't really see it with the naked eye, but I can assure you it is tremendously different in speed. Anyway, let's look at the numbers we got. This is using a Python program. Well, let me pause just for a quick second to say that there's not much to see over here on the circuit side, new from last week, other than I put in the circuitry for the buttons, which was fun. There's a current limiting resistor in the circuit itself, but I was surprised to learn you do not need a pull up or pull down resistor, whatever way you wire it. For the Pi, it has internal circuitry for that, and you just need to configure it in the code, which we'll look at in a second. And okay, this is my shell. By the way, I really like working this way with the Pi. I SSH in to the board, and that way, you know, I could actually work on this hundreds of miles away if I wanted to, or at least maybe a few feet away, so I wouldn't have to hear that. So let's look at the numbers here. We see numbers 4, 5 miles an hour. In fact, what's really interesting is how exactly consistent the speeds are. I mean, to the millionth of a miles per hour, or certainly to the thousandth and perhaps beyond of an inch. It seems to fall within two modes, either the 4.2 etc. speed or the 5.68, no matter what. I think you could be here all day, and somehow the precision that Williams engineered into that circuitry is just amazing how they did that. Okay. Of course, we all know that's not the case. And the reason why is the resolution of the time code I'm doing just isn't up to snuff. I don't think it's actually that the Python code isn't quite fast enough, though I think that is true also. That is a limiting factor. But I don't think it's that slow. Now, I want to introduce you to this page. I'll put a link in the show notes. This is by a person whose name I'm going to mess up, I'm sure, Joonas and who is a Go player, if I didn't respect him enough already, and a photographer. He put this excellent comprehensive guide comparing all different ways to talk to the GPIO portion. I'm, by the way, using straight Python with the GPIO library, and then I'm using this particular C library. And you can see there is, you know, a factor of 500 or so, 400 from the Python to the C. Now, if I take my speed, and you know, I'm on the order of 33 hertz is the kind of resolution I'm seeing with my 0.04, and I'm far worse than the kind of performance he was seeing. Now, he was doing that measuring outputs I'm doing it using a time function. It could just be the time function in Python is lame. It probably is. There's a newer one in 3.5 I didn't get to. I'm getting off topic. But regardless, clearly I'm not getting the whole story here. The code is not terribly amazing, but I'll put it here anyway. I do some administrative there, print that I'm ready. Check if my button has been pressed. If so, flip the flipper. And then if I haven't started measuring yet, start measuring, mark that I've measured. If I've let go of the button, release the button, and mark that I'm no longer triggered nor measuring. If the end of stroke button has been pressed, well, now it's time to do a measurement, measure, and as long as I don't have a 0 to prevent some divide by 0 problem, I print. Now, what I think is also kind of fun is if I, well, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So then I rewrote the code in C. And it looks surprisingly similar. Again, using this excellent, well, I didn't say again, I'm using this excellent BCM 2835 library, courtesy of Mike Macaulay. I found this quite easy to use. I just had to do a build configure step. My code is quite similar. I'm not going to go through it again, but it's basically the same exact stuff. And when I run this version of the code, works the same. And now we'll see numbers that aren't exactly the same every time. But we do see one puzzling thing. We see one set of numbers, the 42 mile an hour. Those come up all the time, which seem pretty believable and consistent. Because 5 miles an hour just seems awfully slow. But yet we get both. And what I believe it is, and I'm going to prove this next time, is that this little blue relay is an analog, physical device. And the traversal time of its relay contacts, I think, is non-negligible and probably inconsistent. So I'm going to replace that with a power transistor next time, like the kind you'd find on a Williams Fliptronic board, for instance, and then see what we get instead. But I believe that 43 miles an hour is a conservative lower bound of how fast this sucker moves. I think that's interesting. Now, just to give you a feel for how fast this flipper is moving, I'm going to turn off the flipper power. And what I can do is if I push the button here, like I'm flipping, and then push this, you'll see 2.3 seconds, because there was about a 2.3 seconds from when I hit the red to when I hit the white. And if I do that reasonably instantaneously, for a human being at least, you're seeing that I'm like 1/10 the speed that flipper goes. I mean, this flipper really is moving. This isn't just some strange, numerical problem going on here. I cannot, with my fingers, get a number that's anywhere close to what that flipper can do. Now, I can sort of cheat, and if I push both buttons at the same exact time, without actually trying to do, one after the other, sometimes I'll get really lucky and hit some huge number. But if I legitimately am trying to hit one and then the other, this piece of electromechanical machinery is blowing my doors off in terms of trying to go from this button to this button. Remember, he has the disadvantage of having to go, all this distance of wire at a speed slightly below the speed of light, and then waiting for that relay to trigger, and then finally firing. But I don't know. I think this is pretty interesting. I think 40 miles an hour is believable and kind of cool at the same time. I'm going to keep going with this. Again, I want to acknowledge Mike Macaulay for giving me this library, and also this excellent overview from Juma. And stay tuned for the next time. Okay, I think that's all for now. Bye-bye.